everybody, welcome to CAF Warbird Tube, the show where we talk about World War II, aviation, history, and so much more. Warbird Tube is produced by the Commemorative Air Force, the world's largest flying museum. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and honor through flight and living history experiences. The CAF began the Warbird movement more than 65 years ago, and thanks to the support of individuals like you, we continue to grow strong. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and now our host, Steve Buss. Thanks for watching and keep 'em flying.
Good evening and welcome everyone watching tonight. This is episode number 106 of Warbird Tube. Tonight we get an early look at this year's Flying Legends of Victory Tour hosted by CAF Airbase Arizona. But as always, before we get started, please do us a favor. If you haven't already done so, please just take a moment to like, share, or subscribe and follow us. And if you do subscribe on YouTube, make sure you click that bell icon to get notifications about new episodes of Warbird Tube when they are available. All right. As you're watching the presentation tonight, you may have some questions. Just type them in the comments section. We'll try to answer them either during the presentation or before we sign off. And joining us now from Arizona, Airbase Arizona to be exact, Mike Garrett, who's the tour director for the Airbase. Mike, glad to have you here today.
Nice to be here, Steve. Thank you very much.
Well, tell us a little bit about your background in aviation and how you got to be promoted to tour director.
So I'm an aeronautical engineer by training. I had 36 years at Boeing, and prior to that at McDonnell Douglas Combined Service. Companies merged in 1997. So I have an airplane performance background. I did a lot of wind tunnel testing and flight testing for both McDonnell Douglas and Boeing, and ran the aerodynamics group at Boeing for all the 700 series aircraft. I had a college professor who was very much into World War II airplanes, and especially the Battle of Britain. His favorite airplane was the Spitfire, and we watched the movie on Reginald Mitchell, who was the designer of the Spitfire, and he kind of got me the bug for staying connected with World War II airplanes. Even during my 36 years going to air shows in Southern California, especially when I started there, and then doing some of that in Seattle. And then I retired from Boeing in 2015. Became a docent at the Museum of Flight up there in Seattle, and spent a lot of time on the Boeing B, which is the restored B-17F model they have up there, and they got a B-29, so I spent a lot of time out there. And then somebody out there said, hey, if you're going to be in Phoenix, you should connect with the airbase down there. And so when we moved down here, not full-time, but as a snowbird, and February of 2016, I connected with the airbase down here, became a docent, and then soon got hooked on flying. They said, you can fly on the planes too. I go, oh, wow. So I became a loadmaster and went out on tour starting in 2017. And then in 2019, I was working as a tour coordinator, so helping the tour director with coordinating stops for each tour season. And he resigned, and they asked me to take over for him. So I said, sure. So in May of 2019, I became the tour director, and I've been doing it ever since. So it's been very fun, very challenging job sometimes, but it's very fun to get the airplane on tour.
Well, as you mentioned, the Airbase Arizona not only has the touring airplanes, which we'll talk about tonight, but also the museum. Just give us a brief overview of the museum and about how many folks are involved with Airbase Arizona.
So we have over 400 members total. We started with nothing when Sentimental Journey first came to us in the late 70s. I was being restored out on the field there, just to the left of that building out in the dirt. Actually, there was no asphalt on the ramp, and so they built the hangar soon after that, which is why our B-25 is named Made in the Shade, a play on words, and that it was the first plane we actually restored all indoors. And then soon after that, a couple years later, we built the museum hangar, which is the hangar you see there in front of you. The maintenance hangar is behind it. We have a full-time museum open now, as you can see inside there, from Wednesdays through Sundays now. We just opened up on Sunday again, so we operate from 10 to 4 every day, and people can come in. We have a number of docents on the shifts that give tours of the planes there. You see the Vietnam era airplanes there on the right, the MiG-21 and the F-4. We've got a couple of World War I replicas there. You can see the Newport there in the bottom, and we have a number of helicopters, including the Huey from gunship from Vietnam. So it's a full-time museum. There's a PX there. That museum operates in the summertime too, even when the two bombers are out on tour. So we've been pretty successful with the museum, getting the marketing out. We've had so far, since the bombers have come back, we've had probably our most successful year with the museum from an attendance airport standpoint. And right now, it's lots of people down on spring break and spring training. So this is a big time of year for us, not only for the museum, but flying any one of our 6 airplanes. Both our Stearman and SNJ were out flying today. I think they had 5 or 6 flights today. And the B-25 will be flying on I know this Saturday, along with our C-45. And we have a C-47 flight scheduled too. SJ is just about done with maintenance. She's done engine runs, and we're trying to schedule a maintenance flight on her probably Friday or Saturday. We'll see if that all, you know how maintenance is on the Warbird. Yes. When they're ready to go, they're ready to go. She'll be up and running and ready to go, fly rides here. We have to do some pilot training, not much, because we did a lot of pilot training on Sentimental Journey before she went into for heavy maintenance at the beginning of January. So she's going to be pretty much ready to go on tour. We got her all shined up and ready to go.
Good. And one thing I'd like to point out about the museum, as we're looking at this shot, you see there's no real barriers in front of any of the airplanes that are there. You can get up close and personal, and the docents are pretty well versed in being able to talk about all the aircraft that are on display.
That's right. So the airplanes are not artifacts. If you go to the Museum of Flight or the Smithsonian, they've been restored to their original conditions, which is good. And there's a need for that. But we're more of a hands-on museum. You can see the ladder there in front of the F-4 Phantom. We also have one in front of our MiG right now, and the TBM, which is not shown. And we give cockpit tours, so people pay a small fee to get a personal tour of the cockpits. In fact, in the MiG, you can even sit in the cockpit of the MiG-15 from the early 50s, and the docents do a good job of giving them personal tours of the cockpits, and that's been very successful for us too as well.
Awesome. Well, before we dive into the specifics of the tour, we have one question that popped in already, and this is going to go back to your Museum of Flight in Seattle. Can either of the B-17 or B-29 at Boeing, are they going to be made flyable, or are they going to be static?
No, those are both static. The Boeing B was actually flown over to the Museum of Flight, but the precondition of that from the owner was that upon his death, it would be restored to its original condition and is an artifact now. Okay. But the engines, that airplane could be brought back, but it would need to do a service bulletin on the spar and a couple other things. But on some lists, it's shown as flyable, but it will never fly again. And the B-29 was brought out at China Lake, where it was used for tow practice by the Navy, and it's been restored back to its original condition too, but the engines were not restored, so it will never fly again. So it's serving its life as an artifact now, with the interior being totally redone everything back to the way it was when it went into service in 1944.
All right. So we have the artifacts, but let's talk about these flying artifacts that we're going to see around the country. The two aircraft that are the basis of this tour is the B-25 and the B-17. Talk a little bit about the history of the B-25. That has a little combat history.
It does. So it was built as a B-25J model. So the J's were the most numerous of all of the models produced. It had the fixed guns, the 50 cals on the sides, so two on each side, plus the fixed gun in the front. So those were used for offense. So the pilot could shoot those and use those for offense. It came out of the factory in Kansas City in '44. It then went across the Atlantic and served in Italy and Corsica. It was flown with the 319th Bombardment Group there in Corsica. It flew 15 missions over Italy and Yugoslavia, mainly low-level bombing runs on railroad yards and bridges. So it flew 15 missions at that time. After the war, it was used as a trainer, as many of the B-25s were. That's why there are many that are still flying, much more than the 17s or 24s or 29s, because one, they were less expensive to maintain. They were fast. They were converted. Ours was converted to a TB-25N and used as a trainer. The top turret was removed, and there was a bench seat, which we use now to fly people. But it was used as a trainer to train pilots after the war. And then many generals used them either to fly themselves or to be flown around the country because they were fast and fun to fly. So ours, as many airplanes were after it saw service as a trainer, was put up for auction, and it was bought by a company that used it to as a bug sprayer down in the South, Texas and Alabama. In fact, one of our pilots, as a kid in Dothan in Alabama, actually was playing around when this was put out to pasture, so to speak, before it was brought back and acquired by us. And it came into us in 1981, I believe it was, and went back into service in 2009. So it had a very long restoration. It was brought down to just the bare bones. Everything was stripped out until there was not much left. Because when you use it with insecticide in the bomb bay, there's a lot of corrosion. So she took a lot longer to restore than Sentimental Journey, which was used as a water bomber as opposed to a bug sprayer. So bug sprayers didn't fare very well unless you had a lot of money and could put them down and restore them and take a lot of TLC. So she's put back in her same colors as she flew with the 319th group. The blue was so that squadron, which flew out of Corsica on the east coast of Corsica, was the nacelles and the tail were blue, and she's got number 18 on her, which is exactly what she flew in World War II. So we're lucky to have her, and even more lucky that she's a combat veteran and is still flying.
Very good. And of course, the star of the tour is Sentimental Journey.
Sentimental Journey, yep. She did not see combat. None of the B-17s that are flying or considered airworthy but not flying, none of those flew combat. In fact, all of them were built either in late 44 or early 45 at the end of the war. And because of that, they were in good shape when they were picked up at auction, most of them as water bombers, as ours was, or for other service after the war. She was actually flown as a drone mothership after the war, flying for the Air Force, and was used to fly other B-17s operated as drones in the South Pacific, where the atomic bombs were being tested. And she would take those planes and fly them through the clouds or through the atomic waste clouds. And if you don't know, you can, by taking samples, you can generate what the chemicals and reactions are of that to determine the yield in those bombs. So she was used for that after the war. Didn't have any guns on her. She was also used as search and sea rescue and mapping out of the Philippines too as well. But, she also was put up at auction and bought by Aero Union, which is where many B-17s were. It's a company up out of Chico, California, where she flew many years as a war bomber before she was flown around the country to try to sell her. And Mike Clark, one of the founding members of the Arizona wing at that time, acquired her for a price that is pretty cheap by today's standards. And we got her, and then she was in decent shape. Had to get the top turret from Lacey Lady out of Oregon, and got to get Boeing's help with manufacturing a new chin turret. So we flew her a lot starting in, I think it was 82. Didn't sell rides at the start, but we were taking her around and showing her, doing tours and air shows. In fact, the 35 bombs on her that are shown, that are painted on her, are not the 35 missions, because she didn't fly any, but are the 35 stops she did in the first year. That's a lot of stops. So.
Yeah, indeed. That's quite a bit. Is the paint scheme on Sentimental Journey, is it just a sort of generic B-17? It's not patterned on actual aircraft?
It is the 457th Bomb Group, and the reason it was one of the main reasons why it was selected from the 457th Bomb Group is because there was a Rebel model available to buy. I don't have it with me. It's at the base. I'd show you, but it's exactly that configuration. So at that time, we were able to sell, people were able to sell models, were able to buy the model and make the kits. And we still get kids who come out, who've made the model and come out, which is awesome to see. They'll come out with it painted in the 457th Bomb Group, and they're out by the plane, and we'll take pictures of it with them. So that model is actually still available. So that the 457th Bomb Group is with the 8th Air Force, operating out of England.
All right. Well, you are just about ready to go out on tour, and before we wrap up tonight, we're going to actually reveal the tour schedule. Most of it is ready to go. There's a couple of stops that are still in progress, but so stick around, because we'll be able to see where you will be going with the airplanes this year. Tell us about a typical tour stop. What happens when Sentimental Journey and Made in the Shade are on the road?
So we coordinate with the host. We typically target a 11 a.m. arrival into each stop on Monday from the previous stop. And we do that so that we have time for pilots who are mostly our airline pilots in their day jobs to get to fly home. We target at 11 a.m., which is what we identify in the press release and with local media outlets to coordinate for them being there upon our arrival to interview the crews, the pilots and the ground crews as needed, so we can get our story out. We don't do tours on Monday. We give the crews the afternoon off, and then we start our static tours typically on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 9 to 5. And we fly our rides on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and those are typically in the morning. We'll fly between 3 and 5 flights per plane, depending on demand. And we'll typically start our afternoon tours around 2 o'clock. We're doing up to 5 rides. We'll do it sooner, but we always say we're open then from 2 to 6 in the afternoons. So at many stops, we'll have a line of at least an hour long to try and get out to the plane. There'll be a line to buy the tickets at the trailer. There's our B-17 trailer right there. You can see that stop there, which parked out on the ramp. And then we sometimes fly 4 days. We know we're going to have a lot of demand. We'll fly rides on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but most stops are just 3 days. And then I'll just say that is Becky Thatcher Keller in Bismarck. I'll just interrupt there 1 second. She is the daughter of David Thatcher, who was on the Doolittle raid. He was flying on the Ruptured Duck, which Ted Lawson flew, who was the author of 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. And David Thatcher was the flight engineer who was actually in the back of the plane, and was the only one that wasn't severely injured. So that was her first flight on a B-25, and so we were thrilled to have her, and she was thrilled to be on the airplane.
Absolutely.
Then on Monday morning, we pack her up. The truck and trailers, if we're both together, there'll be 2. Head to the next stop, and the plane flies to the next stop. And we're there at 11 a.m. typically, and we start all over again. So we do it each week. We try and get our flyers out. We coordinate with local media. We coordinate with Facebook and get our Facebook ads out for each stop about 6 weeks ahead of time, and do all that coordination so that people know we're coming. So Airbase Arizona has about over 120,000 social media followers. I think it's about 115,000 on Facebook and 7,000 on Instagram. So that is through a lot of hard work through through NetWeave, running our Facebook and Instagram, and Kevin McNulty and company, and he's helped us a lot, and we've done very well with that. So we get a lot of people just waiting for the schedule that we're about to announce, and I get emails all the time, when are you going to announce your schedule and where are you going to be? So it's an anticipated event, and so this year we're going out for, as you'll see, about 16 stops, but each stop is different as to where we go. Like you see here in Bozeman, we were in 2020, we were in the back by some hangars, and very nice area there. And so it just depends on each stop and where we go as to what the turnout is. And sometimes our marketing does really well, and sometimes the stop is not as good, and we may not go back there the next time. But we've been pretty successful with most all of our stops.
Well, you mentioned the use of social media, news releases, things like that. It's sort of a rinse and repeat that you do for each tour stop. And I know you started as tour director in 2019, but before the rise of social media, can you talk about, were there any more difficulties in getting the word out, before you're able to use Facebook?
Yeah. Prior to actually 2020 or 2020, I think it was 2020, we didn't book rides online. All our rides were booked the old-fashioned way by telephone. So our ride coordinators were on the phone. Most of that was not done through social media. It was done through newspapers, our website, trying to get the word out, which is a little inconsistent depending on your host and how well they did at getting the word out or not getting the word out. And ride coordinators would be up till midnight taking phone calls, and they'd be at dinner, have to excuse themselves. So it was a lot of work. But we internally have gone to online sales for quite a while, and that has been a real blessing. A lot of work getting it all set up, but it works really well. You can see what flights are sold out, which ones are not. So so that works well. Typically 6 weeks out when we do our Facebook ads, we work the media with a press release 1 to 2 weeks out. We don't go any further than that because media have a pretty short attention span, and you really want to get, about a week out, and then the night of, Sunday, our media focal, Brenda, is doing a lot of work. Her goal is to have 30 media contacts between radio and TV and print media and newspapers. Print newspapers work well with older audiences in smaller towns, especially where they got a lot. But you also got to remember that print media is also all digital now too. So being on the front page of the paper is really helpful. It's usually in the smaller markets because there people still, when you ask them how they hear about us, yeah, I saw you in today's paper, and they come out, and it says we get probably, depending on the stop, we get 30 to 50% of our sales are walk-ups.
Wow.
So people hear about us and they see us. We always fly over the town a couple times when we land, and we'll invariably get people that are coming right out to hear the sound of radios, which they don't hear very often. So they're coming out to see us, and which is always good. So depending on the stop, now some stops we've been booked out. We've been booked up 5 flights a day before we even arrive. So makes it fairly easy then with selling rides, except we got to turn away people. So it just depends on the stop and which plane is there, and as to what our advanced sales are. But it's always nice to see, when, especially with Sentimental Journey and those nose seats, because you get your seats when you buy them, you stay in the nose, and people know about that, even though they pay more money. Those are the seats that go first, for example, and it's the social media especially where people know, and they are the ones that are buying the seats in advance, whether it's at the stop or they're flying to the stop, sometimes from a foreign country. Now, they're not planning their whole trip around us, but once they know that we're going to be in a location that they're going to be, they're flying in also because we're there. So it's awesome. I mean, it's so fun when you talk to people and they say, I've been waiting to fly on you for years, and I finally got my chance. So
that's incredible.
It's fun.
How do you go about choosing where you're going to stop?
Well, choosing a stop is, as we'll see when we present, a lot of it is where we've been before. So based on past success, we'll go back. We typically don't go to the same stop every year, though this year we are, because we had some issues last year with the B-25 being available because of some maintenance issues. So in fact, in one stop, the B-25 and the B-17 were not available. So we're going back to that stop again, just to honor that commitment we made. A new stop is really based upon the conversation with the host. We put out applications for stops that people can go on our website and apply for us to be there. They can go through the CAF National as well and do that, but we also provide that where they can go in and request a stop. Anybody who requests a stop right now, we can get it for this year, but I have people requesting stops for next year. And it depends on where we're going, but anytime somebody wants us there, that's half the battle. Making a cold call to a stop, which we do every once in a while, is not our best approach, where I have to fill a stop at the last minute, or like during COVID, that was almost a matter of course for sometimes having to cancel a stop and try and get a new one sometimes within a month. But and I can usually tell when I talk to a host, and a host can be a airport manager or a FBO manager or a local museum. I can usually tell within the first five minutes if it's going to be a good stop, because if they're excited and they've heard about us and they want us there, that really helps. So that's choosing the stop, and anytime we get help with hotels, whether discounted or sponsored. So Many of these stops, if you work with these smaller airports where the airport manager is also the FBO manager, they get with the local town and get money and sponsorships from local businesses in the town. And many times they will, help pay for our hotel and car, and sometimes even get with the FBO to sponsor fuel. So those are stops where, we like to go back to, and we have stops like that ask us to come back a lot, and they'll pay for some or sometimes all of our expenses. So those aren't that common, but it does happen.
And that's important to note, because obviously with flying the airplanes, we're sharing the stories of the aircraft and the veterans and those who maintained and built the aircraft during World War II. But it's also a way that the airbase is able to generate money to put into the other aircraft and other restorations. So any sponsorship or help that you can get along the line just helps Airbase Arizona that much farther down the road in your budgeting for the rest of the aircraft.
Absolutely, and it really helps. And they want to know when we're coming back, and I always love it when people want us there to start with. So it makes it very easy to schedule. I can't schedule it every year like that, because we have fans who want to see us in other parts of the country. So we are more than welcome to. I'm already have a list of stops for next year. I'm even looking at for people that have asked for us to come. We haven't been to the East Coast in a couple of years, since actually 2020. So, which was the Arsenal of Democracy back in DC, which got shifted around a couple times because of COVID. But actually, this stop here is in Bozeman, and 3 of those folks there in the blue jumpsuits were part of the Inspiration 4. Were the astronauts for Inspiration 4, which was the first all-civil launch on a SpaceX later in 2021. And they asked us to come up while we were scheduled there. They wanted to buy some flights for because they were up there for pilot training in some of the jets that they had up there. So they asked us to come, and so we flew with 3 of the 4 astronauts and their families on a couple of flights for them. So that was one of the neat things that we did in Bozeman. That was back in August of 2021.
Ah, yes. Now, there are a number of tour operators or vintage aircraft tours that happen throughout the United States, but unique to Airbase Arizona is you actually cross the border and go up into Canada.
We do. We're the only ones to do that on a regular basis. Others have done it every once in a while, but we've been doing that for years, either into Eastern Canada or Western Canada. And they love us up there. They don't get a chance to see these Warbirds a lot. So, and especially the 25, for some reason, I actually know the reason that is the 25 was used as a trainer up there by their Air Force up into the early 60s, and there is a following up there that followed the Mitchell, and they love it when we come with the Mitchell and the Sentimental Journey. But we haven't been there because of COVID and the border restrictions since 2019. So we, as we'll show, we're gonna head back up. It's a little bit of a logistics issue we got to get with from an immigration standpoint, and then customs as well. Our PX, we try and do as many of our more expensive things made in the U.S. because of tariffs if they're made in China. So we work on those issues, and we work with our friends at Transport Canada, the FAA equivalent, because they technically don't honor the exemption. They don't have an exemption for Warbirds, but they will honor the FAA exemption, but we have to apply for it. So, and then we got to provide them, as we do the FAA, with every stop we're going, so they know where we're going. We also have to have a licensed A&P mechanic with us on each stop, because they will not, any stops in the U.S. we can get any local A and P to sign off on any repairs where we don't have an A and P. But when we go up into Canada, we have to have that specifically with us as a requirement. So it's not a big deal. We just need to make sure our crew chiefs, that at least one of them for each of the two planes has that certification.
Just a few more paperwork hurdles to go through to go up into Canada. You mentioned the A&Ps. Sometimes these older airplanes have a tendency to be a little finicky, especially on the road. Do you take spare parts and things with you, or do you just rely on shipping?
If you're after 16 weeks, as we will be this year, away from home, we take spare parts. Our B-17 carries, because of its size, we carry a lot of like a generator or magneto, oil coolers, things such as that. We carry those. The B-25 is not quite as large, so it carries those in the trailer. So we carry those parts with us. On the B-17, we'll do a 100-hour inspection on the road, and we'll bring up an extra crew chief to do that on the road per our FAA requirement. So we're pretty much self-contained. So if anything major happens, unfortunately, we have to do engine changes. We've done those on the road too, and gotten back up in the air after a couple-week delay. But as I say, we scramble pretty well. But some things you can't predict. But especially with SJ this year, we changed number 4 engine, so she's new. We've changed out all of our turbochargers, so they're all new and ready to go, because we're one of the few 17s that still flies with their turbochargers for the extra thrust. So we get her as current and up to date, and get all the things that we know can cause us problems in the field based on history. Get those all resolved as best we can, so that we are ready to go.
One of the great things looking at the Sentimental Journey and Made in the Shade, when you look in the bomb bay, you see a lot of signatures from veterans, and that must be one of the highlights of these tour stops, when the veterans actually come out to take a look at these airplanes.
That's right, and they're getting fewer and fewer. So it's even more special when we see them now. Many of them are in their very late 90s or early 100s, actually. So it's very special when they come out. Some of them are even still able. Any veteran, World War II veteran who is able to get on the plane gets to fly for free, based on space available. So. And we still have them. Dick Nelms, who is 99, he just turned 100. He was in up the Museum of Flight, flew 35 missions out of Germany, or over Germany, with the 8th Air Force. He flew on the plane up in Seattle last summer, so we were honored to have him fly with us. And again, you have to be able to get on the airplane unassisted, which he was able to do at 99 years old. So in fact, that flight you're looking at there in Kingman, there was a 100-year-old that his family, we went up there and flew their whole family for his 100th birthday. So he was able to get on the plane by himself and be able to fly. And then whether they fly in the plane or not, any veteran, any Rosie the Riveter we've had, there's that 100-year-old there sitting in the chair on the lower right with his family, and then the upper left, that's him coming off the plane after his flight. So whether you were a pilot or a crew member, or you helped build the planes, or were a mechanic on the plane, we asked them if they would like to sign the bomb bay. So we've got signatures on the 25 and the 17 of those that mostly crew members, but a couple of Rosie the Rivers, 3 of the Tokyo Raiders, David Thatcher, Dick Cole, and Ed Saylor, all have signed our Bombay, and we cherish those, especially on 25. So it's kind of our wall of fame when we get a chance to do that.
When you're on tour, how many people do you take with you to volunteer to support the tour stops? And do you also bring in volunteers from the community where you are to help supplant what you have on tour?
Yes, so the basic crew is 8 per plane. 2 of those are pilots, and 1's a crew chief. The other 5 are ground support. So the pilots are the ones who fly in on Monday and then they're at the airport and they don't come back till the following Thursday. The other 5 are there for at least a 2-week commitment. To be out on tour, the crew chiefs typically will go 2 or 3 weeks. So between them, the positions of those 5, one's a truck driver, one is the ground operations coordinator who's responsible for all the ground operations at the stop. We have a truck driver, we have a ride coordinator. So, and any or all of those can be flight load masters. So that's the 4th crew position after the 2 pilots and the crew chief. So those are the standard 8 crew members on each stop. Back there's Dick Nelms right there on the left up in Seattle flying with our crew. That's Annie Floden there on the right from Boeing, who was on Warbird tube a couple months ago. And there's one of the veterans signing our Bombay right there. We also have local folks who have gone to our ground school, and if they're there and not part of the 8 crew, we're more than happy to have them out and in the PX or doing any one or the other. They can be load master without going out for 2 weeks. We have local wings that come out and help us as well. If there's a local CAF wing, and some of those have gone to ground school now. So I know several of the wings have joined us at ground school this last January, and will be going out either on tour with us or in local stop with us. That gentleman there, who has since passed away, he was 100 years old in that picture. That's Sam up in Modesto. He flew 25 missions in 1942 and 43. So if you don't know, those pilots who flew those 25 missions in those years, their chances of making their 25 missions for any crew was about 1 in 3. And he had some stories to tell under that Bombay where we were all with him because his daughter flew on the plane and we were all in tears, literally. He was telling the stories and he was in tears. So it's just amazing the stories that they tell. So going back, so we get local support. If you have not been through ground school, you can't do any of the trailer, the official duties, but you're more than welcome. We get help from local CAPs, so local Civil Air Patrol cadets love to come out and help with crowd control, especially on flying days where they help set up cones when we become a hot ramp or we need people to stay behind the cones. When after the engine starts, so all of that is we do that with local help. We've had EAA support as well at stops, so they just don't support their own B-17, which is down for maintenance right now, but they're more than welcome to help us as well, which is fun. So we get lots of local support, not just from the hosts, but people who want to come out and help us as well. So it's always
That's
encouraging.
fantastic. Yeah. All right, I'm going to try and skip ahead here a little bit because we're to the point in the show where I think there we go, want to show folks where you're going this year.
Yeah, so this is our tour schedule, which is mostly firmed up. So that first stop is in Chino. That's not officially a summer tour schedule, but I added it just so people know. This is our third year going to Plains of Fame. And we have a great relationship with obviously Steve Hinton and Jerry Wilkins, who's the director of their museum there. So we're taking both the 25 and the 17 over for a local stop, April 26th to 30th, and so it's lots of fun there because of all the planes that they have. So when you get some time, you get to go into the museum and see all their. So they have quite a large collection of flying airplanes, and sometimes they put a P-51 out on Saturday morning. We started engines with the 51 and the 17 and the 25. We all taxi out one after another, which is a lot of fun. So we will be going back there. We're actually going to March Air Force Base with the B-17 the weekend before. So we're going to just hop up to Chino, and the 25 will fly over on that Wednesday. Tour officially starts in New Mexico. So that's a Thursday start on the 25th of May in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So that's officially the first start of the Flying Legends of Victory tour. We're heading up to Loveland, Fort Collins area for the next week. Rock Springs, the little town of Rock Springs, has always been fantastic for us, with a great host there. And then we reach our pivot point, as I call them, or stake in the ground, because there's an air show we've been asked to attend and in Twin Falls. So that's the Magic Valley Air Show, which is the 75th year of the airport there, called Jocelyn Field, which was named after a World War II pilot who flew B-17s. So we're going up there to fly in their air show, which is going to be on that Saturday, the 17th, which is Father's Day. That Sunday is Father's Day. So it's Father's Day weekend. So we'll be going into Twin Falls for that stop. We're going up to Helena, our first time there, the capital of Montana, of Yellowstone fame. So we'll say hi to John Dutton when we're there. So we got an FBO there who's excited to have us, and that's going to be our starting point to go up into Canada. So we'll go into Medicine Hat, which we've been to a couple times before, which is just across the border up into Alberta. That's the AB is Alberta. So we'll be going in there for a week. We're firm in Calgary now. We'll be at the airport at the International Airport there. Actually, in Calgary, we'll be flying 4 days of rides in Calgary, and it's actually the first weekend of the Calgary Stampede. So we expect a lot of traffic. If you don't know, that's one of the biggest rodeos in the world, the Stampede, if not the biggest rodeo in the world. So we'll be doing probably some flyovers of that event too as well. We'll see. And then we just working on, that's why the asterisk is there. I was just on the phone with them today, going up to about 180 miles north to Edmonton and flying in Edmonton itself, which will be, I don't think we've flown to Edmonton. We've flown to airports around there, but the first time into Edmonton. And working with the host there is happy to have us as well. Penticton, if you don't know, is a resort town in the Okanagan's the east side of British Columbia, with beautiful stop with lots of lakes around it. We always do extremely well there. So we're going back for the first time since 2019. Victoria over on Vancouver Island has always been good for us there too. So that's west of Vancouver. So we'll be going into there before we then drop down into Seattle, which we were there last year. We weren't there. I didn't coordinate enough in time to get into the air show, but I did coordinate this time in advance, plenty of advance, and they would like both our planes to fly in Seafair. So that's a big deal. The Blue Angels are always at Seafair. Seafarer Air Show is flown over Lake Washington, if you don't know, and the hydroplane races are held there. The tradition's gone back for almost 50 years of the hydroplane races there, probably 50 years. So we'll be flying both the 25 and the 17 for the air show, and we'll be parked at the Museum of Flight, which is going to generate lots of people coming from the Museum of Flight that week for tours, because they have quite a few planes on static display in the Museum of Flight parking lot. So no ride scheduled for that, and as a result, we'll be there the second week. So we'll book rides that first week, and then we'll fly 4 days in Seattle the following week. Also working with Boeing on doing a flyover of the senior tour. That's their Boeing-sponsored golf tournament for the seniors out at TPC at Snoqualmie Ridge. Working with them on doing a flyover of that event there as well. So it'll be a busy couple weeks. Up to Arlington again this year for Arlington, which is an air show and fly-in up there. They're great hosts. Actually, the mayor up there runs Skyfest, so it's nice thing to have when the mayor is running Skyfest and loves to have us. So we'll be up there for that event. I don't know who else is flying yet in that, but we're front and center on their webpage from last year, and already are with SJ on the Skyfest page for this year. Wenatchee is a stop where both the 17 and the 25 were down for maintenance during that stop. So we're going back to Wenatchee, which is just east of Seattle. In fact, if you don't know, the Corsair flights for the Devotion movie were flown in Wenatchee in the winter. So all those scenes flying over Korea in the wintertime in that movie were flown in Wenatchee, out of Wenatchee Airport in Washington. So little known fact. And then we're going down to Nampa, which is just outside of Boise, which is where the P-40 Warhawk Museum is. We'll be going in there, and that's always a hit because they come out in droves to see us in Nampa, in the Boise area. So we'll be flying 4 days there, hopefully, in Nampa. And then our stop of the year last year, outstanding host in Logan, where we sold out everything. And by far the best PX sales and tour sales and ride sales we had is in Logan. So we'll be there starting just after that Labor Day weekend and flying. So that'll be our last stop before we head back to Falcon Field and Mesa after that. So again, Penticton and Edmonton are still in work. Our Penticton stop is firm, but it was firm for the week before that. So I'm coordinating with them to see if we can move that back a week. Because our stop, we were supposed to be in the 17th and 23rd. They found out they're doing some runway and ramp construction. They can't host us. So that was another stop in BC. So we're juggling things around, which this time of year is normal, but we're firm enough to go ahead and announce everything else, and the fact that those two hopefully will firm up this week. So.
Excellent. So the schedule is going to be officially released the end of this week and over the weekend, correct?
That's correct. So we'll post on Facebook on Saturday. Kevin said we'll post. That's why I'm hedging my bets on Penticton and Edmonton. Hopefully those asterisks will be removed by Saturday, and we'll post that because we have lots of Facebook and Instagram followers, Facebook especially, who want to know when we're going to be where. So we will get that out to everybody.
And for those who are interested in booking a flight at one of these tour stops, when will they be able to actually go online and sign up?
So all these stops will be live for the event information. Rides, other than air shows, we usually put rides out about 3 months in advance. So our ride schedule will probably start fairly soon, and we'll start opening them up for May here probably first, and then we'll open up June. The air shows link us to the air shows for rides. So especially for Twin Falls and Skyfest, we will take the cue from them, because when they go live with that we're going to be there and rides are available, we will link them up, and the rest will soon follow after those. So they'll be posted this week with information as to where we're going to be, and we'll start posting rides pretty soon after that, probably by the end of March.
Okay. And the best way to keep track of when those ride reservations open up, is that through social media or the website, or both?
So if you go on flyinglegendstour.com, that's the easiest one to remember. So flyinglegendstour.com right now won't show you anything other than our 2022 tour is completed. But Saturday or soon after, you'll be able to see all the stops on a map, and then see where they're going to be and tour times, and what time tours will be available. The rides will be posted as soon as I get with my ride coordinator. We'll start posting the ride times, and then so times will typically be posted at 9, 10, and 11, and then for one plane, and 9:15, 10:15, 11:15 for the other. And as soon as they start filling up, we'll post flights at 12 and 1. So that's typically how it goes. So as they fill up, we open more.
Excellent. Mike, any final thoughts before we sign off tonight?
No, Steve, I appreciate you having me on. It's great to talk with everybody. Encourage people to follow us as we go out on tour this year. I know we'll get, based on emails I've gotten already, I know there's a lot of interest as to where we're going. For those of you who are they're tuned in from the Midwest or the East Coast, be patient. I think we're taking a look at that for next year. We haven't made any decisions on that yet, but we know we have a lot of fans. We haven't been back east since 2020. So we're looking to see if we can make that happen in 2024. So appreciate everybody having an interest and tuning in. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Don't forget to click the like, subscribe, or follow button so we can let you know about future episodes of Warbird Tube. If you have any ideas for a topic you'd like to hear more about, send Leah Block an email at media@cafhq.org. Mike, good luck on the tour. I'm sure it's going to be successful, and what a way to spend the summer. Have fun.
Absolutely. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Until next time, from the Commemorative Air Force, I'm Steve Buss. Have a good night.